The consumer will be like, why is it so expensive? Aren't there no inputs? You're organic. Don't they just eat what grows? And it's because they grow at a normal rate. Not even slow. I don't even want to call it slow because it's not slow. It's just fucking normal. And what happens with the feedlots, putting the cows in confinement and not letting them move, that's fast. That's faster than nature.
We're here at Wildom Farm with Julie.
Hi.
And you are, correct me if I'm wrong, first generation?
Yes.
Cool. So I guess, because I heard about you 2 years ago from, funny enough, the farm I briefly worked on in Pennsylvania, just around the corner. And so I've been trying to come here for the last couple of years and finally been able to make it. So I guess you just get started, just wanting to hear more about your backstory and essentially what led you here. Because I remember when I first talked to you, mentioned you came from Chicago. And so that's obviously way different than this.
Yeah. So I was living in Chicago at the time, and a couple different things were happening. Two different things happening like parallel to each other. So one was living in Chicago and decided to make some dietary changes. And the initial thing that inspired me to make the dietary changes was because I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. And so I did a Whole30 diet, which is just basically eating whole foods for 30 days and eliminating grains. And you do eliminate dairy on that too. But I think the thing about it is the focus on the whole foods and cooking from scratch and eliminating processed things and sugar and whatnot. And what started as was something that was purely superficial, wanting to lose weight. It blew my mind how much better I felt, and things that I had totally normalized about my health, and thought that it was genetic and thought that it was just my lot in life and things I was going to deal with forever, like getting sinus infections or having anxiety. These things just totally went away, and in such a short period of time, just such a short period of time of eating the whole foods diet, I noticed such profound health changes that I was like, holy shit, why did no one ever talk to me about that? And I feel like I discovered a secret that somebody, whoever knew about it, was keeping it a secret, And so it is a 30-day thing, but I incorporated a lot of the foundational stuff into my diet moving forward. And it totally changed the way that I started cooking and just eating on a regular basis. So that led me to going to the farmer's market the following summer. I kind of set an intention. I had a farmer's market just a couple blocks from me. And I kind of set an intention that was I'm going to buy everything I can from the farmer's market. And I'm only going to go to the grocery store for salts. I was very much I'm going to get all the vegetables, all the meat. I'm going to cook from that stuff. And that's what I'm doing this summer. And it was on Sundays, and there was yoga before at the market opening, and then it literally became my church. I would walk there and I would do yoga, and then I would get coffee from the coffee vendor, and I would go home, and then I would grab my dog and my bags, and I would walk back to get all my groceries. And I just remember having the conversations with the different farmers, and I remember that it just I felt really good and healthy before, and I felt this eating whole foods, eating this way, really impacted my health. But then once I actually started shopping at the farmer's market, it took my health to the next level. And I think it was a combination of the food being more nutrient dense, one, because there was such a noticeable difference in the taste. But two, it was having the connection with the person that was growing the food. It's a whole soul connection. We're supposed to be that connected to our food. We're supposed to know where our food comes from. It's it's part of being human. And so I think it just there was that element of it that kind of sent me to another place health-wise. And just having these conversations with farms, I realized that not every farm at the farmer's market is organic. Not every farm at the farmer's market raises their animals on pasture. You know what I mean? It's it taught me all of these different methods of agriculture. And then I kind of was cool because then I got to choose which one of those I wanted to support and where I wanted to spend my money and what was important to me, because I've always been a huge believer that like animal protein is part of a healthy diet. And I've also always like been really into animal welfare, and like the whole like factory farm thing like made me very sad, and like I didn't like that. So I guess whenever I first read regenerative agriculture, and it was at the guy who ended up becoming like my main farmer, who I bought all my meat from, I didn't know what it was. And then he explained it to me, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the perfect mix of like eating animal protein and supporting good animal welfare. And so it made so much sense to me. And I was like, this is like the only meat I want to eat. This is like the only type of meat that I want to put in my body. And then I really never looked back from that point. Like I never went back to the grocery store to buy my protein. Even when I would like travel, I was really particular about where, I mean, a lot of times I would like pack meat and bring it with me, but I was like particular about who I would shop with and where I would get it. And then, you know, just learning about like how bullshit the labels are at the grocery store, and how that really doesn't matter. And it's just so important to know the person that's producing your food. And so, I went down a huge rabbit hole, just started like listening to a bunch of podcasts and reading books, and I would go to a couple different conferences, and then I would just go visit farms like around Chicago. Like any chance I could, I would drive and I would go visit a farm.
Yeah.
And I just became like very, very interested in it. And so while all of that was happening.
Well, I guess before moving on, what year, so you mentioned that you first started the Whole30. Do you remember what year that was?
Probably like 2016, 2015. Yeah, probably 2015, I would say. It's like when I first did the whole first round of that and started like dipping toes in that. And then it probably was like 2017 when I got like really into like regenerative agriculture.
Do you remember the conferences you went to?
Yeah, so the first conference was Moses in Wisconsin. It's like the Midwest Organic Sustainable Educational something. I can't remember the exact what it stands for, but that was the first one. And that one, so this is the other part of what was happening, is that my parents inherited a family land that is now Wildom, that is a farm. It was a farm, but it wasn't farmed by anybody in my family. It was leased out, and they were doing corn and soy rotation, and it was conventionally managed. So I'm learning all this stuff about regenerative agriculture. My parents inherit a farm that my grandfather purchased in the 70s, and they decide they want to move here and live here full time. And so I started kind of being like a bug in their ear, like, well, you know, like conventional ag, like, and then the spraying and like all this. And I'm trying to like, you know, pass on everything I know. And I was like, I think that we could do something really cool where we're producing food in a way that's good for the ecosystem and good for the animals, and also staying right there in the community. Because like corn and soy is just export, you know? So I said, my dad hates to fly. So I said, like, come to this conference and just see what, you know, just see what you think. And he did. They drove from here to Chicago, and then to Chicago, from Chicago to Wisconsin, we drove to the conference. And after like one day, my dad was like, yeah, that's like the future. Like, that's like what food needs to be. That's like what we need to do with the land. And I think like for me, it was, first of all, I never thought I would be a farmer, ever. Like, I still can't believe I'm a farmer. Some days I'm like, well, what point is your breaking point? But anyway, here I am. I'm a farmer. But like, I was not destined to go like, I wasn't so into regenerative agriculture that I wanted to go like buy a farm in the middle of nowhere. It just like all of these pieces fell in place. And because it was like land that my family owned and had owned, and my family generations are from this area, I guess I just felt a sort of like calling to steward it in a way that was really, really right, like by Mother Nature. So I think that's sort of what happened, but it took me a long time to actually make the jump. So like 2017, got into regenerative agriculture, started talking to my parents about like this. And it was a really tough decision because I had a business in Chicago that was newer, but it was doing well and I loved it. And it was a vintage and resale clothing store. But the thing about it is that like it was a collection of a bunch of different sellers and we rotated it every month. So every month we swapped out what sellers were in there. So it was a very cool like community sort of store thing that we had going on, and it was really hard for me to walk away from that. So it took years for me to make the decision to make the leap. And I don't know, I just sort of had this like pull, like something just told me I need to be there, I need to be doing this. And I also then, while I was in Chicago, I studied at the Nutritional Therapy Association. So that got me more like, okay, food, you know, gave me that educational side, which I already, you know, had learned about and knew, but it was way more in-depth training of how food is affecting us. Mm-hmm. And then I did it. I was like, I'm doing it. And it worked out perfect because my business partner in Chicago was like, actually, I'm homesick and I want to move back to Seattle, where she was from. So like, it was this beautiful thing that everything aligned. And I remember when I was packing up to come here, I just brought like a suitcase because I wanted to come and start planning. And I still had a couple months lease on my apartment in Chicago. And I plan on going back and packing up and saying bye to my friends and everything. But I just wanted to get here like immediately. And I remember like I'm packing up and my dad's like, I just want you to know, like, there's this thing in Chicago called COVID and I think you should just watch out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, Dad, you know. And then I come here and then like weeks later, COVID happens. And I'm like, holy shit, like my life in Chicago would have been over anyway. My business would have closed, like, and I would have been forced to make the decision. So it was just such a beautiful thing that I made the decision and I wasn't forced to.
Yeah.
It like affirmed it even more, that everything happened exactly how it was supposed to happen. And then, yeah, I was here and I was like building this thing and outside every day, and there was nothing to even miss about living in a city. So it was like also made the transition to a rural place very, very easy because I felt really fortunate for what I was doing and like the experience that I was having during that time.
Thank you for sharing all that. That's actually why I tell people to go shake the hand that feeds you, because you have no idea where that leads to. Because you went from doing Whole30 to 2 years later at conferences. Like, yeah. That's crazy. That's such a fast turnaround time, especially considering, you know, you didn't grow up in this world at all. I'm curious then, at the time when you started going to farmers markets, you know, started doing all this stuff, did any of your friends ever take any interest like you did? Especially once I'm assuming you were sharing food with them too as
Yeah. So like my business partner, she, you know, our store was really close to my apartment. So I would like make us lunch a lot of times. So she kind of got into it a little bit that way. And then my boyfriend at the time also got like super on board with just like getting the meat from the farmer. And yeah, that was like our whole thing. I think like the quick turnaround time is honestly just because of how impacted I was health-wise. Like, I think that like I probably wasn't super like, I probably was dealing with a lot of issues that a mass, you know, majority of people deal with. And I just like normalized it and thought that was how I was supposed to feel, like that I was supposed to be tired a lot, or I was supposed to feel depressed, or that anxiety was just normal, you know, or just like the thing with like the sinus infections. Like I thought nothing of it. Like I got sinus infections, I took antibiotics, and that was just like what happened to me like several times a year. And then when it was like all of that went away, it just changed me. Like I was just like, this is the solution. The solution is like how I'm, you know, fueling my body. And it also, of course, like when you feel better, you want to like move more. So then it was like, you know, wanting to exercise more and wanting to be outside more. And all of those things are just super natural to being a human being. But the modern lifestyle that we've created is the exact opposite of all of that.
Yeah, way opposite.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious, then, do you remember the first day you officially got here and then it was time to start? Especially, I mean, it definitely during COVID and all that too. I was curious if you remember the very first day.
I'm trying to think, like one of the first things we did was we just started cleaning out like buildings because the buildings hadn't been used, you know? So I remember like cleaning out the barn, which had like really, really, really old hay in it. And then like so many wild animals had bedded in it, you know? And then like we would find like snakes and we would just find so many things, different skulls. And we were like, well, what do you think this was, you know? And so we would, and then we put it all out on the pasture. Yeah, so that was like one of the first things I remember doing.
Now, 5 years later, I'm assuming you're glad you made that decision.
Yeah, I love it here. I mean, I love living here. I love this place. I think this is definitely where I feel like I belong the most. I think like the community here is great. I think there's so much to do outdoors here that it like really, really is very supportive of the lifestyle of being outdoors and like using your body. And then I think I told you guys this earlier, but like recently getting into like mountain biking and then the like kayaking whitewater is just like so cool for me because I use my body every single day for work, but like in those scenarios, I'm using my body still and it's still, you know, very physical, but it's like an outlet of just like, it feels so good and such like a great, you know, stress relief. I think that it's harder than I could have like imagined it being. I think like I remember the first time I took pigs to the processor and honestly, when I dropped them off, like my instinct was like to just let them back on the trailer and like bring them back here because I felt so like wrong about it. Like, and I don't feel that way now. I don't feel like, you know, I still feel like what I'm doing is right, that raising the animals this way and eating meat, and I feel all of it is part of the circle, but I just remember having this awful feeling of kind of a little bit of like playing God with like selecting, you know, that. And so that feeling I thought would be something that got easier with time or that became more normal with time. And the whole slaughter thing is something that like never has for me. Like it always is hard. Every single time I take animals, I cry and it's like a hard day. And like, I'm even just like irritable leading up to that day. Like it definitely really, really affects me emotionally and mentally, the whole death part. It's like, but it's just that part. Like, it's like, I love the entirety leading up to that. I love the way that we raise animals. I love working with the animals. Like, I love seeing the pigs in the woods. I could talk about them, you know, forever and watch them forever. And I think it's like a beautiful life that they have. And then on the other end, like the protein is super, like, it's delicious and it's super nutrient dense. And then like having, you know, mother come in buying, you know, pork and knowing that she's choosing to buy her meat from us to feed her entire family, like that is such a rewarding feeling too. It's just that transition between like the life and then like the protein that like I don't think that ever gets easier. I also don't know if I would want that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up because
Yeah.
I've heard I mean, that's what I hear most commonly is it's a very tough day, but they don't want that to change because they feel like if that feeling went away, then that probably wouldn't be a good sign of just being like completely desensitized to it all.
No, I agree. I wouldn't want to be desensitized. And I think the fact that I am so sensitive to it, it obviously impacts the way that I raise them and like what I, and even just the after the fact, like utilizing all of the parts of the animal. Like to me, that's like so incredibly important because it is a life. We should use every single part to completion. And that's something that honestly happens on a large scale, like large scale ag and slaughter facilities. Like they have that super dialed in to where there's like no waste. You know what I mean? There's an outlet for every single part of the animal because it's mass. Like, but and the small and medium, like there isn't. Like I go take, when I take my sheep to the processor, like, and go back to pick up my hides because I, get the hides tanned and then I sell the sheepskins. There are hides in the dumpster. And it's like nobody's fault. Like it's like the processor, it would cost more for them to find an outlet than to just dispose of them. The farmer too, not every farmer wants the hides back. They maybe don't have an outlet or they don't have a way to get it tanned or whatever. But so I guess one of my goals and what I try to do is like reduce the amount of waste as much as possible from the animals. And so it's like getting all the bones back, making the bone broth, using the pig lard to make skincare. Even like the pig lard we use a lot for all of the cooking. Like we cook everything in lard.
And this is why I try to tell consumers too, that if you want to care about where your food comes from and actually having good quality food long term, because this takes such a long time to fix, essentially. I mean, the effects we're feeling now started back in FDR, so over 100 years ago. And so if you have to start now and support the actual farmers and ranchers with that problem, to me, it's fixed over time as consumers, how they spend their money and support, then you'll finally have those outlets to where then you can start doing all of that. And again, this is also why I always say to shake the hand that feeds you, because there's so much that goes into all of this. And then if we want to, again, fix it all, to me, I only think the way it is fixed is by the people, no one else. I don't see a way out of a food system without the people. And so you've got to start now because it takes a very long time. And whenever you go to a farm, you kind of start seeing it, how it could take a long time to do that.
Yeah. But I think like exactly what you're saying. It's like each person just supporting that system and then that system expanding on, within the community on a local level. Like it just keeps, that's the only thing really like I can focus on. And I think I only thing I should focus on is like what is happening right here. You know what I mean? How am I managing my land? What kind of protein am I producing for the customers who are shopping with me, like, and caring so deeply about like my specific community here.
So how'd you go about that when you first started? Because like, for example, she was briefly on camera, but Sarah, I talked to her a little bit and didn't realize that how she started working for you.
Oh yeah, because she bought a half hog.
Yeah, she bought a half hog for her and her parents. So I'm just curious, how did you start building your community around here for Wildom Farm?
I think honestly, it started with connecting with other farmers. So interestingly, there are several other small farmers around my age who all started out within a couple years of each other and are all doing something different. It's really kind of crazy. But like there's like a hemp farm, there's like, different market garden situations, like a herbal farm that does like a lot of like tinctures and teas and stuff. And so I first connected with other farmers and then but that was like a little bit challenging too because it was also COVID. So I didn't get an opportunity to meet like a ton of people the first year or so that I was here. But I think the other thing was just social media, like, was just getting on social media and then word of mouth just traveling around the area kind of. I mean, I still like, even after 5 years, it's like, I feel like I've barely touched the amount of people that we could potentially touch with the farm. People are still always like discovering us and learning about us. And I think that's just an ongoing thing.
How did you traverse through, especially considering you started pretty much at the beginning of COVID, how are you able to traverse through all of that, especially from like a financial standpoint?
I think just starting smaller and then scaling. And like I said, so like the first year we started with pigs, broilers, egg layers, and turkeys. And so the things that we started with had a faster turnaround time. So like the egg layers, within however many months, 4 months, we started producing eggs. The meat chickens, within a couple months, a few months, 3 months maybe, we had meat. The pigs took longer, but the pigs were probably like ready by fall, like October, November. So we started with the animals that we were going to be able to turn around faster. And then when we added the cows and sheep, that was like a year later. But I still think the financial part is still like very, very challenging because it does take so long to see the money back. Like I feel like you look out there and it looks like we have all these cows and we do, but a lot of them we are holding back to breed and then grow the herd. Like we're keeping all of the females. So like, if a female's born and then we decide to keep her, she's really not going to have a calf for 2 years. And then that calf isn't going to be ready. When she has a calf, then it's going to take at least 2 more years before that's actually beef. So that's 4 years before you see any money come back from one cow. And once you have that all established, then it's but like we're still in the growing pains of that and the financial challenges of that. Like our pig operation's pretty good. It's pretty set. Pigs can reproduce super fast. I mean, they have big litters. Their gestation period is like under 4 months. And it doesn't take as long to finish a pig. It's like around 10, 11 months. So that's faster. But with the cows, it's definitely a very much like a longer term thing.
People and most consumers have no idea, especially on cattle, specifically cattle, they really don't understand the time it takes. Because I remember when the first Steak and Shake shared about their tallow, and then online people were just asking about this or that, about grass-fed finish and regenerative tallow, and then not realizing that I believe we only have roughly around like 80 million head of cattle in America, the lowest since the 50s. When talking on the processing aspect, that's just such a massive bottleneck with JBS and how they're just essentially dominating that whole industry. That's why I also say you have to support the actual ranchers doing the work, because that continues to dwindle. And if we were to try to bring that back, like you just said, 4 years for what you're doing, and just thinking on the grand scale of just how fragile the food system can really be from that standpoint. Because we added another 80 million, well, you can't harvest that 80 million overnight.
No, and I think like that's super important. That's a super important point that I try to bring up with customers or anybody who wants to support a local farm. So a lot of times we are sold out of our beef because guess what? I didn't know 2 or 4 years ago, because even if I bought a calf from a farmer, which we do buy some of our calves just to supplement the herd. So even if I bought a calf, like it's like, I didn't know, I couldn't have foreseen what the demand was going to be. So a lot of times we're just sold out of beef because we just don't have, I didn't know how much beef we were gonna sell, and I can't just make it appear, and it takes years to grow. And so like,
As a valid point, I didn't even think about the forecasting aspect.
yes.
You can't even, how can you, especially starting out?
No, you have no idea. You
Holy
have no
smokes.
idea how fast you're going to move beef or what the demand is going to be. And that's like another huge risk as well. So I try to tell consumers that like when you are shopping with a farm, instead of deciding what you want to buy and then going to the farmer and asking them if they have it, just go see what the farm has and then plan your meals that way based on what they have in stock. Like if it's the middle of July and you go to the farmer's market and you go up to a vegetable stand, you're not going to demand that the vegetable farmer has asparagus that's not in season, right? You're going to like see what they have and you're going to buy what they have and then you're going to cook that way. So it's like it should be the same thing with meats because I don't have all the cuts all the time.
It's the byproduct of buying everything from a grocery store your whole life because
Yes.
you're used to that. It's very challenging, and yet again, that's why you got to go visit a farm or ranch to see for yourself, and also understand that ribeyes aren't the only thing that's really good from a cow. There's way more other good cuts.
Yeah, so one of the main course for, so we do dinners out here on the pasture, and we just had one Thursday, and they're 5-course meal, and it's all protein from our farm and all locally sourced vegetables. It's a really, really great experience. But the main course was steak frites. And of course I did the fries and lard. And then the steak first of all, I didn't have enough of any single steak. Like it was 61 people at the dinner. So I didn't have enough of any single steak. And of course I didn't want to use like ribeyes or strip steaks or something that I can sell to consumers. And I also just wanted to showcase these like underrated cuts. And so that's literally what it said on the menu. It was like steak frites, and then the description was like underrated cuts, lard fried potatoes. And so I did like eye of round and London broil and just muscles from the round to show people that like, you know, the entire animal is really amazing, and all the cuts can be really amazing, and you don't just have to look for filet or whatever. And I remember there was a little bit left over and I explained this too. I came out and I talked and I said, you know, this is what the underrated cuts are. These are where the muscle groups are. This is how we prepared it. And, you know, and maybe it's not going to be as tender as a filet because these are muscles that are more used. They're coming from the back end of the cow, which if you think about like your butt, like, you know, you're using it a lot when you're walking around. So, a guest had a few pieces left between her and her husband. And she said, can we get a to-go box because I just don't want to waste the filet. Like, even though it wasn't filet and even though I explained that it was underrated cut, like that's how good it was that she still was like, I don't want to waste the filet. Can I get a to-go box, you know? Mm-hmm. So she still referenced it as this like high-end, you know, most prized cut on the cow, which I thought was awesome.
But then also just goes to show that you can make all of those just incredibly tasty and good and
yes.
nutritious too.
Yeah.
That's another thing I just think about too in terms of having some type of cookbook related to if you buy even just like a quarter or half cow.
Yeah.
Because that's also, I'm always in the frame of mind of making it as frictionless as possible for both the producers and consumers, but in terms of trying to support producers, making it as frictionless as possible for consumers. And I feel like a massive barrier to entry for someone to make the leap of buying a quarter or half is something like that. You buy a bunch of cuts that you've never even heard of.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, all right, I'm just going to keep this in the freezer until it's just like doomsday, it seems like.
No, I agree. I think having recipes for those cuts that people don't, you know, just don't know is like a great idea. Somebody should do that.
Well, I plan to. We're gonna have a Regeneration one.
Yeah. Well, let me know if you need any ideas.
Yeah.
For different cuts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Going back to actually the pandemic too, whenever you first started selling the meat, I'm curious. Because the previous farm we visited, they did a farm stay, and she was just mentioning how at the height of the pandemic, her business was going really well because that was a lot of wake-up call for people, and we're starting to buy food and whatnot. But then after everything pretty much reopened, that really kind of nosedived. I was curious if when you first started, any of the customers from then like stuck with you and are here now?
Yeah, I think a lot of our customers, a lot of our original customers stuck with us. Like I did not see a drop off post COVID. I get that was a thing that happened and people maybe were like less, you know, they lost that momentum, but I feel like we retained a lot of our customers and our customer base has just continued to grow, which has been great.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm curious then to, when they come and visit, I guess this should be good from your perspective too. What are some good questions for people to ask whenever they first ever make their visit, like first visit? Because even like going back to whenever you started talking to farmers at the farmer's market,
yeah,
because that's another barrier to entry when you've never spoken to a farmer. We have these preconceived notions of Especially if it's a man that it's just they're hard nosed and you know this or that, and so it could be intimidating for them to want to talk. So what are some
I guess.
good questions you think could be good to ask?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess it depends what exactly you're looking for. You know, if you're looking for regenerative, if you're looking for grass fed. I mean, I would definitely, if you're looking for grass fed, I would, you know, ask if the cows or sheep are grass fed, grass finished, and if they're pasture raised, because you could raise a cow in a barn paddock, in the same paddock its entire life, and just bring it hay, and that would be grass fed, you know. So I think like those two, grass fed, finished, and pasture raised, are three really important things. I would also want to know, like, is your pasture sprayed for weeds? And then I would want to know, which I don't even think about this question. And when people ask me that, I'm like, because I just know the way we raise the animals, you know what I mean? And it's just like so obscene to me to think that we would ever like do this. But people do ask me, like, do you give hormones? And so that could be another thing, or, you know, antibiotics, or even like vaccines. But like, I raise meat the way that I want the meat raised that I eat. But like the way that I'm raising the animals, like, is, you cannot get meat like this everywhere. And I could not get it in Chicago. Like, I talked to the pork farmers, like a couple of them, and I was like, would you feed certified organic feed? Because they were feeding non-GMO feed or conventional feed, maybe even, you know? And they were like, no, because we've asked our customers if they would, we told them like what the price difference would have to be for the meat, and they said they don't care. So it's like there's regenerative farms that are still feeding conventional or non-GMO feed because the organic feed is so expensive that the consumer won't want to pay the higher price. But my whole thing was like, our price is higher because we do feed the organic feed and because of the way we raise the animals. And I think consumers should have the option, if they want to spend money because they value those things, then they should have the option to do that. But I feel like it gets into the nitty gritty where like, just because you can't find that exact thing you want, like I had to make sacrifices when I was a consumer because it was like, I care more about knowing the farmer, knowing that the pigs were raised outside, and then they were fed conventional feed. That was more important to me than like going to the grocery store and buying pork from organic pigs.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes the farmer isn't always doing it exactly how you want to, but also I think like supporting that farmer and then maybe trying to make suggestions or from the inside kind of is better than not supporting them at all.
And it goes back to your point of like forecasting essentially, because if a farmer is going to want to make that change, that's going to be so costly, you're going to have to make sure you've got enough customers that want that. Because say you only have 5, well then you're kind of shit out of luck. You just lost money, and you also have a bunch of other pork that's not being sold. That's why, again, the consumers have to really understand how nitty gritty this all is. Because if you want to make these changes, I try to make that point a lot too with conventional versus regenerative and all of that, because it's just a whole new world. But take like Will Harris, for example, who used to be conventional and now was one of the pioneers of the grass-fed and finished movement. 20 years ago, people would have been calling him XYZ farmer because he was conventional. But now they see him as this revered, amazing farmer. You have to be patient and have grace, but then also talk to the people too. Because that's another thing I notice all the time, and why I'm on the road for these next 5 months is people love to talk online, do none of it in person. They do none of this.
Yeah.
I mean, same for the media, same for all of them. You can, and then I barely know anything, and I can see through all of that. So I can't imagine being an actual farmer and seeing through all the BS that people just spew.
Yeah. I think, you know, I have a big support system of other farmers who I work with, and not all of them are regenerative, and some of them are conventional. And I think that was a major change for me between just being a consumer and looking at this whole thing from the outside and being kind of judgmental about the way that people farm, you know, frankly, to actually farming and realizing how like fucking hard it is, and realizing and recognizing that every farmer, regardless of their practices, is like doing a good job and working really hard. And like being kind and respectful, it just creates much more change than making it seem like there's such a gap between practices.
There won't be any change if you don't do
Yeah.
that. That's why I try to do that. I was like, you guys don't realize that if you're just going to spew all that, they're not going to change.
Yeah.
They're going to just shoo you away and just continue on their old path. It's just, why would you, I mean, just try to be in their shoes. You're 50, 60, or even 70. You've been farming this your whole life on the land that was probably passed down to you, taught by the person that was taught from their father or grandfather. And then you have some city slicker who has bought all their food from the grocery store their whole lives, and then they start just chirping at you the whole time. I would tell them to just shut the hell up and get away. And so I think you do have to be critical and have good questions and have that, but then also have grace and really try to have an open mind and heart for it all.
Yeah. I mean, I think with what I'm doing on the farm here is that I'm just kind of doing what I'm doing, and then I'm hoping that maybe it creates some sort of influence, wider spread in the community of like higher demand, which then creates, you know, maybe other producers to make some changes. Like a lot of the beef that's raised here doesn't stay here. Like it gets sold at auction and then it goes to feedlot. You know, that's how most beef is. And it's like, we're always sold out of beef. And then people are going to the grocery store and buying beef. But then there's all these other farmers, you know, all my neighbors raising cows, and the cows aren't sold direct to consumer.
And same for all the corn and soy too. A lot of the farmers aren't even consuming anything that's on their farm.
Right.
It's crazy.
But like, that's just the way that things went. And for like, again, making the leap is really, really hard, and creates, you know, it could just be really scary. So it's definitely a reason why some people don't. I think too, like when I was talking to those farms about, you know, would you feed your animals organic? The price difference between certified organic feed and non-GMO or conventional feed is like, the certified organic feed is like 4 times, or like at least what we're getting that's no corn, no soy. You know, because I also have to get it shipped from Virginia, is like 4 times the cost of if I fed conventional feed. But like my price point isn't 4 times the cost of the farmer who's doing pastured pigs and feeding conventional feed. You know what I mean? So it's like my margins actually suck a lot more, even though my price point's like higher. So that's a whole other thing that then the farmer has to figure out, is like, I believe that what I'm doing is better for the ecosystem, because then it's like I'm supporting organic crops by feeding the organic, and I think it's better for the animals too, and I think it produces healthier meat. So there's all these reasons why, but then I also now have to figure out how to make up some of that profit margin. And I think that one of the ways that I have figured that out a little bit is through like the lard, utilizing the lard from the pigs for the lard-based moisturizer that we make.
Before we go into, because I do want to talk on the skincare too, because that's another thing. The consumers will see that really high price point and just think, oh, the farmer's just raking in the dough from each sale. But they don't understand that at all, that the cost of that, the economics of our food is just all jacked up. And I always find it hilarious how a lot of people will talk on the food culture of Europe and how much better the food is and all of that. And they don't realize that Europeans spend 20 to 30% of their income on food.
Yeah.
We used to be that. Now we don't. And not even that, we try to spend less and less and less money on food and to use it for God knows what else. And then, yeah, if you want to buy actual good quality food, it's going to cost more. But then,
you're saving money on other things.
It just
is about prioritizing the food, because like,
yeah.
I feel like that was very much who I was. And I can think of like customers off of the top of my mind right now who I know are just like median income people, but they really, really prioritize their food expenses. Like they want to spend more money on their food that's really important to them. So for you know, it's something that I think that the grocery store prices have created such a unnatural, like, expectation of what food should cost.
I remember even just going back to Ben's farm and working on his and doing the farmer's market. I vividly remember one woman, she would always come there every week. And I actually ended up being the farmer's market guy too. I was doing those by myself. But they would ask why Ben's corn was a couple bucks more than the neighbor's corn, but then they're conventional and use sprays, and Ben obviously didn't. And so it's just trying to have those conversations of why it is the price it is, but it's also hard to get them to even care, because in the end she didn't end up buying that, and she ended up buying the cheaper one.
So yeah, and it's great. I'm so interested in like the different looking, like how the different vegetables look too. I bought strawberries, and I got strawberries from Ben, and then I got strawberries from another farm. I needed to supplement, and I wasn't even thinking about it. It was like for one of our dinners, and I'm not like opposed to supporting or buying from conventional. So like I do like supporting different farms. I would definitely prefer to support all like regenerative and organic, but there's a couple farms that I know are not totally, and I'm like, I'm okay with it. Like I'm more like it needs to be local. Mm-hmm. Okay. But when I got the strawberries from the other farm, and then I was like looking at them next to Ben's strawberries, the strawberries from the other farm just looked like I like went to the grocery store. And I was just like, so like, to me, it was like a big turnoff, because I was like, oh, Ben's are like cute, and they're like all different, and they got personality. and then these ones are like too pretty. I'm like, that's, and so I think like personally, I'm like trained to gravitate toward like knowing like, I want to find a little bug in my lettuce. I want to know that the bugs want to eat it too. I don't want to eat what like was sprayed so there's no bugs.
That's a very great point. That's actually funny, because I remember picking those strawberries and how it was pretty much often than not, you'd pick one up and half of it was eaten by a worm.
But that's the other thing. It's like, right? Like, it's like, that's the other struggle. It's like you're growing all this stuff without sprays, and then you're fighting with bugs or chipmunks or everything else that wants to eat this stuff that's delicious. But yeah, I think it's like all of those realities that go into the price. I've heard, I'm sure you've heard this too. A consumer will be like, well, why is it so expensive? Like, aren't there no inputs? Like, you're organic. Like, you don't have to there's no inputs. It's the same thing with the grass-fed beef. Like, it's like, we don't have to feed them anything. Don't they just eat like what grows? Like, so why would it be more expensive? And it's like, well, because, they get moved every single day. So it's like so labor intensive with like the building and the taking down of the fence, just so that we can have this like grassland ecosystem that's thriving and healthy and holistic. And then on top of that, it's like they grow at a normal rate. Not even slow. I don't even want to call it slow, because it's not slow. It's just fucking normal. Like what happens with the feedlots.
So true. It's just normal. That's such a great point. It's just normal.
It's just normal. And like what happens with the feedlots and the putting the cows in confinement and not letting them move and feeding them grain to make them bigger and fatter, or tagging, like putting hormones in their ears, is like, that's fast. That's faster than nature. It's just not right.
No.
It's just like.
Well, it also makes me think of, with our disconnection from our food, I've also brought this point up multiple times, how people expect food to grow literally overnight, to where I brought up this point too previously, there was a tweet that had around 330,000 likes stating the person bought a potato and planted and was expecting it to be done the next day. And then I was reading all these comments, and one was just like, yeah, and I did that for blueberries, didn't realize it takes years. And I'm just like, that's where we are at, to where
Yeah.
we expect all of our food to literally grow overnight. And that's not how it works at all. And then this is also my problem with where we're at as a society too, is there's all these problems with agriculture, and then like tech or other people try to find solutions like indoor farming and lab-grown meat and all these other alternatives, thinking that that helps solve it without realizing how any of this works. And then you have to push back to all of that, and it makes it, I don't know where I'm going with all that, but that's just another aspect of agriculture that's also very challenging. Is
Oh yeah.
people will never go for solutions.
Yeah.
People talk to everyone but the farmers and ranchers. I notice this constantly.
Yeah.
They'll talk to tech, they'll talk to the government, because every time I make a post, everyone always tags RFK and Brooke Ron's just like, come save us. She's like, no, you've got to understand it. You should be tagging yourself. You should be tagging your friends.
Yeah.
We've got to, it's us again. It's not, people always say the government's not coming to save us, but then when it comes to food, they act like they are.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that people think that the solution to fixing like nature is to be further away from it.
And then going back to the whole God aspect too, that's what happens too, is trying to play God on a system that has worked itself out. And going back to regenerative agriculture, it's you're working with nature. And so that's why I really hope long-term that continues to grow, because people have to really understand all of that, or else I don't, yeah. Transitioning a little bit, going to the lard, because I did want to talk on that, because when we did the tour, we talked on the pigs and the environment and all the feed and whatnot, and then actual protein, but then skincare, because tallow is skyrocketed like crazy. And I'm curious to hear from your experience too, because this goes back to the perception of the pig and how we see them as these dirty things, but then now you see lard and just be like, why would I put pig fat on my skin? So I'm just curious to talk on just all of lard, the actual biology of it all, because if I remember correctly, we're more aligned with pigs too, to where lard's actually really good for our skin.
Yeah, I hope I remember to touch on all of the things that I want to touch on, because this is super, super interesting to me. I started making the moisturizer back when I lived in Chicago, and I got all my pork from the same farm, and so it just made sense to get the lard. And I didn't think too much into it other than I wanted to make the lard-based moisturizer. I thought it would be good. I made it, I loved it, and then I just knew that whenever I raised my own pigs, that's what I wanted to do. And it is like something that became super, super popular, like before the tallow craze. And so I have so many thoughts. One, it's like, why lard? First of all, I just want to say, like, I will support all animal-based skincare over using plant-based skincare. Okay, so that's first of all. But lard is more similar. So like the chemical makeup of lard is very similar to the sebum, the oil in our skin that we produce. So it makes it more biocompatible, and it makes a lot of sense because if you think about like the digestive system of a cow, they're ruminants, and they're also herbivores versus like a pig that's monogastric omnivore, they're just more similar to us. And then you start thinking about medicine, and you start thinking about what kind of parts are used in surgeries. And it's pig parts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you need, okay, so you have breast implants, and your implant slips or something. They use pig skin then to like put your breast implant back up. Yeah. Or if you need like some sort of stitches that are not on top of your skin, if it's underneath of your skin, they will stitch it with pig intestines. So it's like in medicine, it's always pig because it's so similar to humans. And so it makes sense why the lard would be so amazing for our skin. And then beyond that, it's like, the heritage breed pigs that we raise, they have a lot of excess fat. Like, they just do. And that's why lard has historically always been used for cooking or for skincare, because off of a pig, you get more fat than what you could eat with the protein. And that's just the way that it works. But then when you start to look at grass-fed beef, a lot of times, so they're leaner. So ruminants are just leaner animals generally. And so like a lot of times when we get our beef back from the processor, there's no extra beef fat. Like all of the beef fat either was left on the cuts or went into the grind to make sure that it was a good ratio of, protein to fat in the grind. So there's not a lot. And I was very, very curious about this. So I actually did even reach out to like White Oak Pastures. And I was like, hey, how much excess beef fat do you get off of a cow after everything's gone into the grind or whatever? And I should have checked I still have it in my DM somewhere, but I want to say it was that they said like between like 8 and 15 pounds. That is like not a lot of extra fat from a cow. When I'm talking about, so a cow that weighs, say the hanging weight is 600 pounds. Okay, you're getting 15 pounds of fat from 600-pound hang weight animal versus like our pigs, say their hang weight is 250 pounds. And then we're probably getting like 30 pounds.
Oh my gosh. That's weird.
Of fat.
Yeah. Maybe
40. I mean, depending on the time of year, when it's fall and they're eating a ton of acorns, they're like really fat. Like they have a lot of fat on them. So I don't know. I guess I don't know where all the tallow is going to come from. I mean, if it's grass fed, of course, there's a ton of excess beef fat in the commercial, grain fed and feedlots. Like there's a ton of beef fat and that can be used, but I don't know where all of the grass fed tallow will come from for the skincare. So I think for me, it's like multiple reasons. It's like, pigs have a lot of excess fat. We need to use it anyway. And it's more biocompatible with our skin.
Whenever customers come, I'm just curious just to hear on that too. Do people? It might be different now that we're in rural Maryland versus Chicago, for example. But I'd just be curious if people just kind of like pig lard skincare. What is that? Do you ever get that?
Yeah, so the biggest question I get right now as tallow is becoming more popularized is like, what's the difference between lard and tallow?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I'll just say it so that everybody knows, like tallow is beef fat and then lard is pig fat. But yeah, sometimes people are very confused, like why would I put lard on my skin or animal fat in general? Like they're kind of like, don't really understand, or yeah, some people could be. I remember when I first launched the lard-based moisturizer, I was trying to get like a couple wholesale accounts, and I got an email from one of them that did not want to carry it, and also then proceeded to tell me how nobody would want to buy it because it says lard on the jar and people will be turned off by that. Which I do think that they had somewhat of a point, but I also don't think that they clearly weren't like a skincare, on the skincare trends of seeing the future that like animal-based skincare would become so popular. So I think there's that too, but I think it's like, I try to explain it that all moisturizers are made up of fatty acids. Like, so if you look at the back of the ingredients, it's just going to be, it's not going to say lard or tallow. It's going to say like stearic acid or, you know what I mean? One fatty acid within the whole fat.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool with the tallow and lard is that it's a whole fat. Like people are so into like whole foods using the whole thing. So it's like, why would you take apart a fat into fatty acids and then recreate a moisturizer versus just using the whole fat on your skin?
Is lard the number one thing you use to cook?
Yes. Yeah, lard's the number one thing I use to cook.
I needed to use that more. I actually have not really cooked lard with much, actually. Is there any difference in smoke point for that versus other animal fats?
The lard has a higher smoke point than tallow.
Oh, so it's even better.
Yeah, it does have a higher smoke point. Yeah, I love the lard. Like I use it for sautéing, and then I use it for the frying a lot, and I use it for even like when I made those steaks for the dinner, I sous vide them and I put lard in with them. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So the last topic was kind of going back to the beginning and talking more on just culture essentially, and the big city versus now. Is it 5 years since you started this?
Yeah.
Now that you're 5 years in, I'm just curious to hear, are there things that you miss about Chicago and the big city versus here?
There's things that I miss, but the list of things that I miss aren't things that would take me back to living in a city. I miss sushi. I miss like great restaurants. I miss live music, but I definitely like this whole lifestyle much better.
Have any of your Chicago friends come and visited here?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it. Yeah, so friends from Chicago, friends from Pittsburgh too. I lived in Cincinnati for a short time and they've come here. So a lot of my friends have come to the farm, and I think everyone thinks the same thing. It's just like, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of land, and it's a beautiful, it's just so serene, like seeing the livestock and, just out there grazing, doing their thing, or the pigs in the woods. I think the pigs in the woods is the most special because, you can drive down the road and see cows in a pasture. Like cows in a pasture isn't as...
It's the most common thing you probably see outside of cornfields.
So, but seeing the pigs like running around the woods is just not something... I mean, I wonder what percentage of pigs are raised that way.
Very minimal.
Yes.
Very minimal. Yeah. Crap, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. So going back to your pops, too, whenever we're talking on kind of helping him, education on the regenerative route, what are your parents' thoughts, after 5 years of being here and just seeing everything you've done, too? Have they started growing their own food or anything?
My parents?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they eat all of the food from the farm.
Yeah, I was just curious I didn't know if they wanted to, actually start doing, I know you said your parents or your dad does excavation, but I didn't know if this helped incentivize to do anything on their own, even though obviously it's together. Yeah,
it's definitely all together. But my mom is super like into the garden. So she does a lot with the garden. So she's involved a lot that way. And they're definitely also involved in the farm. Like they support me so much, just helping out with like whatever I really need help with. And then we eat all of the meat from the farm. It's nice because we all have very similar outlooks on food, and we all really eat the same way, which is just like whole foods. So we have dinner together a lot, and spend a lot of time together.
I love that. So from a woman's perspective, because typically also with agriculture and farms and ranches, it's typically, you notice it's the male, and then there's like the ranch wife or that aspect, but you did this on your own and you're the first generation for it. So I'm curious, trying to see if I can rephrase this, just for any woman that might be listening or will see this, what advice would you have for them if they have any interest in agriculture?
Well, I didn't plan it this way, but it just happened that my entire team is all women. And I'm totally not like a all women.
Yeah, and I didn't mean it in that way.
No, I know, but I'm getting to the point that like I have had guys work on the farm and they have been great. However, my team is all women now at this point right now, and there's been other points in the past where it's also been all women, And I just think that women have the whole like nurturing instinct that's part of like, part of our gender. And so I think that women are really great with livestock because of that, because of understanding that, and because of having that like keen observational and noticing things and noticing like, oh, that's not right, or this needs to, And so I think that's why it's just ended up this way because, maybe we're not like as strong as men, but we have like definitely the other things that put us at a higher advantage when it comes to working with livestock. And I think it's funny too, because like you think of cowboys, not like cowgirls, but I do think there's something to be said about like women just having that, being able to nurture and kind of have that perspective with the livestock. And we crack up because sometimes, we got to load cows or something, and so I'll like get some extra hands to come over, and usually it's just, guys who don't work on the farm or whatever, friends, anything. And they help, but then sometimes like they're a little too, like test, like they want to force them a little too much. And the one day it was just me and Sarah, and we had to load cows, and I was like, well, let's just see if we can get them with just the two of us before I call in any more support. And we got those cows loaded so fast and with such low stress. And I was just like, damn, like, we're really good at this. Like, why are we bringing guys in here when we can just do it? And we both like high-fived each other because we were just like...
That's funny.
Yeah, we did it with like such grace and minimal effort, and like the cows were so calm that it was awesome. Yeah.
Well, because it makes me just think of like the whole, especially from social media, the whole trad life and getting off the grid, the whole idyllic frolicking in the fields with your kids, and I want that to be something to look forward to. But whenever thinking of agriculture and how this is an entirely different lifestyle, so you just have to understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah, it's a totally different lifestyle. So, I mean, I think it's a great I think it's a great way to raise kids. And I think it's a great lifestyle for so many reasons. But then on the other end of that spectrum, it is like also like a hard lifestyle because it is like definitely stressful from a financial perspective. It's not easy to make money farming. The profit margins are slim, and then you're dealing with all of these external factors like nature and predators and things that you can't really control. So like the financial stress of it can be overwhelming at times, especially like when like I said, like we're growing our beef herd, which is all these like dollar signs just out there, not, so there's that. And then there's the really, really hard parts, which are like just sad things happen. Just sad things happen. Like, for example, there was the shade structure. One of the strings was hanging, and this was like nobody's fault. It was just like a weird freak thing that happened, but a lamb basically got its neck stuck. And then in the morning when I went to move the cows, every cow and every sheep moved except for a ewe. And she was just crying. And I was like, and I knew she had a lamb, and I was like, I wonder where her lamb is. She's crying for her lamb. And when I walked up closer, I realized that her lamb had died, and she was standing there, wanting it to move with her, didn't want to leave it. And I started crying because I was like, why is this so sad and so hard? And within like a couple minutes, she kind of realized that the lamb wasn't going to move and that the lamb was died. And then she went with the rest of the herd, and then I took the lamb, and then we moved the structures, and the day just continued on normally. But like sad stuff like that happens with the animals. And I've had to do hard things that I would have never thought I would have had to do. you know, in terms of putting animals down because they weren't going to have a quality of life otherwise. And that's another thing that's crazy is because like I raise the animals to ultimately slaughter them for meat, but then these like younger deaths or just the unexpected deaths are just really sad and hard sometimes. And then there's the whole like danger of working with livestock. Like our animals are great, and I've been fortunate to have like very few incidents happen, but we have had two things happen recently with pigs. Like I got attacked by one of our sows, which was completely unexpected. And I think it was another thing is like I'm so comfortable with the pigs and I'm always around them and I've never had an issue with pigs. So I think my guard was completely down and I woke one of our sows up and then I turned around and started walking away and she just like got me from behind. And I don't know if I startled her because she was asleep. I don't really know what happened. I just know that a like 750-pound animal had me on the ground and she was like above me, biting me. And I was like kicking and screaming for my life and got out of this situation. And she's back to being normal, like her normal friendly self. But you also just don't know. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think, you know, we're all a little bit more cautious now that happened. Like, we're all a little bit more like, okay, like, you know, it's rare that anything happens, but let's, like, not turn our backs to the animals. And just being more cautious, I think. So I think there's pros and cons. I think I don't know, the highs are higher and the lows are lower than a normal life.
Do you want a family yourself?
I definitely want a family, yeah.
I'm curious also, I keep going like comparing Chicago to now. I'm curious, did you have those feelings in Chicago versus now? And has those feelings been stronger since having your farm and, you know, thinking about long-term?
The feelings of wanting a family?
Yeah.
I've always known that I wanted a family, so that's never really been in question. But I think as I'm living here longer and I think as I'm getting older, it's definitely something that is like, I definitely want to have children and I want to like share this with them. And
Because when thinking of just like the whole legacy thing with agriculture, that's what just made me think to ask that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's like if I, you know, do have kids, it's like who knows if they even want to, if they'll even want to be farmers. And I really wouldn't care like either way. But I just think my sister visits a lot and she has a 1-year-old Beau. And even just having him here is so cool just for him to like see the animals and, you know, be in bare feet running around and
How we used to be for a long time as humans.
Yeah, and like my brother's kids, like I have 4 nieces and a nephew from just my brother has 5 kids and like they come to the farm a lot too. And they've also been involved in like the process of like when we do like our 4th of July pig roast, being involved in the process of slaughter and all of that. And they're hunters too. So like, I think having that connection to food from a young age is really important too. I think it's really sad when people like don't want to buy chicken breast because the bone is in the breast, like because they just want it to be boneless. They don't want to touch a bone. Like, I think getting kids involved younger is going to be much better for like those sort of food barrier things and just being a more conscious consumer generally.
Yeah, a lot of times the kids can really help be the ones that are influencing their parents of, you know, making those changes.
Yeah.
I'm curious then from just visitors too, do you have any, I guess, memorable experiences to share of, you know, just a family coming to visit? I know it's kind of like a general question, but, or vague question, I should say, but I just didn't know if there's anything that came to mind of, you know, just witnessing a cool experience of a family, being able to have that experience together on your farm.
I mean, I do think it's cool when families come and do tours and walk around and see the animals, and I'm showing them the animals and everything. And I always love to hear like how the parents kind of explain, you know, because the kids kind of then make the connection like, oh, is that the meat we're gonna eat? You know, and I remember like one time there was a girl that's like, you know, they were like, they did the tour and then they were buying sausages, and she's like, and that's the pigs we saw. And she's like, and that's sad, but that's just the way it is. Like, it was like she could recognize it and understand it, and that she just made the connection. She's the one who said like, it's sad, but that's the way it is. It's like, so she recognized that like, it is sad, but it also is the food that we eat. And so it
adds the gratitude. The gratitude.
Yeah, it definitely adds the gratitude, and hopefully it makes you think about like wanting to know exactly where your food comes from.
And the only way you could do that if you shake the hand that feeds you.
Yes.
So
Thank you so much.
This was great. Thank you for allowing us to visit. This is
Yeah. No, that was really cool. You guys got to see like some interesting things, some pigs escaping, some...
Pigs love to escape. They did that on the third farm too. We were filming, and all of a sudden pigs just came up, and then we put them back, and then they escaped again. And
they do love to escape.